You and I have known for quite some time that Valve is going to make a Steam Deck 2. I mean, why wouldn't they? It's their best-selling hardware ever. And Valve says they want to make one too, but they're waiting for a generational leap. But the big question now is, what does Valve consider to be a generational leap? And what do you consider to be a generational leap? What would make you buy a Steam Deck 2? It wouldn't take very much for me to buy a Steam Deck 2. I'm a content creator. I gotta buy it and review it and make content on it and just use it. And even if I weren't a content creator, it probably wouldn't take much for me to buy a Steam Deck 2. I mean, for starters, there's always the promise of a generational leap. Despite having a fairly powerful gaming desktop, I still game most of the time on Steam Deck or other PC handhelds. And despite like 90% of my gaming time going towards indie games, I do enjoy the occasional AAA game. But how much more would be considered a generational leap? 20%? 30? 40? What about 50%? If Valve is looking for a performance increase of around 50%, then Valve could just make a Steam Deck 2 right now with RDNA 3.5. But that doesn't sound very exciting. Part of me thinks that Valve is going to aim even higher than a 50% increase even. What if Valve wanted to double the performance? An 100% increase in performance. But what if Valve didn't want just that, but also wanted that with the same battery life? That definitely sounds more like a goal Valve wants, especially considering how they've emphasized battery life. Just about everything they've done is in service of battery life. Every upgrade the Steam Deck OLED has from the LCD Steam Deck is done in service of battery life. Well, that and also just having the OLED panel. Like, I've seen the Z2 Extreme leaks and I see they have very impressive performance, up to a 30% increase in performance over the Z1 Extreme at the same wattages. But the leaks for the Z2 Extreme mention nothing about low power efficiency, and that's something that Steam Deck's SoC has always held the advantage in, especially compared to the Z1 Extreme, where at lower wattages, sometimes the Steam Deck's SoC outperforms the Z1 Extreme, which is not a great place to be in. A lot of people seem to think that the Z2 Extreme is going to be in the Steam Deck too, and I don't think it's going to be in there, at least not in its current state. There's a good chance Valve would attempt to work with AMD to make it more balanced between battery life and performance, and of course make it more performant at lower wattages. In terms of CPU, AMD has been making great strides in making all of their CPUs more power efficient as the generations go on. And this is also very true of their desktop CPUs. Their newest desktop CPU releases, they still have a performance increase, but they're not a massive performance increase, but rather it's focusing on power efficiency. It consumes less energy than the last generation, which I think is a big win. So depending on how you look at things, some might call the Z2 Extreme a generational leap over the Steam Deck 1. And it might very well be, but maybe Valve is aiming for something a little higher. But surely Valve isn't just focusing on the performance and battery life, right? Surely Valve is focusing on other things when it comes to the Steam Deck 2, right? There are a couple of features that I would consider to be mandatory in a Steam Deck 2. You know, I asked my podcast Off the Console what their thoughts were on the Steam Deck 2 and what other features a Steam Deck 2 would need to have. And this is their response. What other new features would you like as part of a Steam Deck 2? Like something that isn't like performance or battery life.
USB 4.
That's a good one, yeah.
Hands down, if they don't do that there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I agree. And I think they would have a winning model too, and I've talked about this forever. eGPU would make probably what I'd game on only. I'd only game on that. As long as everything played at like a medium to high, if it's eGPU, maybe high depending on like latency. That's the problem with eGPUs is latency typically. Mm-hmm. I'm 100% down. That's how I'd do it.
USB 4 seems like a natural and obvious inclusion in the Steam Deck 2. For those who didn't even watch the little clip I just posted, USB 4 is instrumental for eGPU support. eGPU support kind of sounds like the antithesis of the Steam Deck. It's high power, uses a lot of wattage, and it's not portable. But that's okay, because people want more power when they're at home. Which brings me to the next feature I'd want in a Steam Deck 2. You know, I didn't think about this until after the podcast, but I'm gonna say it anyways. You know how the Steam Deck has per game performance profiles? What if we had that, but also an additional performance profile for when you're plugged in as well? Like, you'd have a performance profile for when you're plugged in and one for when you're handheld. A lot of what Valve has done is in service of battery life. But when you're plugged in to like a TV or something and you're gaming, battery life isn't even a major consideration anymore. So yeah, something like that. Another thing I want is variable refresh rate. Neither of today's Steam Deck models have variable refresh rate, but apparently Valve was supposed to implement it in the Steam Deck OLED, but as per a recent interview, it seems like they couldn't get variable refresh rate working on the OLED in time for release. The fact that Valve tried to get variable refresh rate working on the Steam Deck OLED tells us that Valve really does want variable refresh rate. Potentially, by the time the Steam Deck 2 rolls around and is announced, they might have figured out variable refresh rates on OLED panels, which would absolutely be a killer feature. Another major feature I'd want with the Steam Deck 2 is something I've talked about on the podcast and talked about a number of times in the past. Some sort of ad hoc multiplayer. Think about the DS or the PSP. If you have a game that supports 2 players ad hoc, you can play multiplayer games ad hoc without the need for Wi-Fi or a hotspot. Imagine that. You and a friend go out in the wilderness camping or whatever, you both have Steam Decks and you want to play multiplayer game, and you can do it without the need for a hotspot or even Wi-Fi or even good signal. You just need to be in proximity of one another. The Steam Deck is perfectly capable of doing some sort of ad hoc network. It has the hardware for it. The only real issue though is that a lot of games aren't designed for this in mind, which is why I think Valve making some sort of API that games can hook into for this functionality would be great. If a feature like this exists, I'm sure developers will target it. Games may even be updated to support this new functionality. I don't know if many Steam Deck owners have friends with Steam Decks that play multiplayer games, but I'm sure this will benefit all of those guys. It's a bit of a long shot because I know I'm the only person that's ever wanted a feature like this on the Steam Deck, but it's something I'm willing to strive for. Another thing I'd really want for the Steam Deck 2 is a second USB port. One at the bottom somewhere. So a USB port at the bottom, that opens up a lot of possibilities. For example, a purpose-made docks could have a USB plug at the bottom and you just slide the Steam Deck in and it just plugs in. Kind of like what you do with a Nintendo Switch. You also wouldn't have this unusual umbilical cable towards the back. You know, the ROG Ally X, despite having 2 USB 4 ports, both of them are at the top of the device. I really would have liked one at the bottom, kind of like what we have with the Legion Go. And finally, the most outlandish feature of them all, the ability to download and install updates while in sleep mode. Imagine this, you can start a download before you go to sleep, and then put your Steam Deck in sleep mode, and then go to sleep, and then wake up, and then when you decide to wake your Steam Deck up, the download is done. It's patched. It's done everything it needs to do. That's what I want. As it stands right now, it's probably not possible to do it on the Steam Deck LCD or even the Steam Deck OLED as it is. But with new hardware comes new possibilities. Starting from the PS4 generation onward, those consoles started having secondary processors. Yes, they would have their main APUs explicitly for playing video games, but then they would have a secondary ARM chip for downloading updates and just downloading games while in sleep mode. Kind of like what your phone does. Your phone can download updates while you're sleeping. Does it sound completely outlandish for a PC handheld to have 2 processors? One to play games and one to just kind of do things in sleep mode? Probably. Is it something that's feasible? I don't know if it's feasible. It's possible, and it's been done. It's just a matter of if it's feasible for handheld purposes. And that's also another major difference with using ARM versus x86, because the Nintendo Switch is ARM based, and ARM is practically optimized for doing things in sleep mode, whereas x86 64 just isn't. That said, I'm not entirely sure how feasible something like this is for what should be a standard PC hardware setup, nor am I really familiar with how ARM can deal with Steam's compression algorithms. But this is wishful thinking after all, right? The Steam Deck 2 is guaranteed, and many Steam Deck owners like myself are guaranteed to buy a second Steam Deck. But there is one specific aspect I'm concerned about: the price. Valve has employed some of the smartest people in the world, which also includes people in marketing, and Valve isn't beholden to shareholder interest, so I'm sure they understand part of the Steam Deck's success was the fact that the Steam Deck starts at $400. Before the Steam Deck, every single PC handheld was insanely expensive. Many still are to this day. There probably isn't a single PC handheld that touches the true value proposition of the original $400 Steam Deck model. For the lowest end model, I think Valve needs to maintain that $400 price point. The one key advantage Valve has over everyone else in the PC handheld market is that, well, Valve owns Steam. Valve literally sells the games that are meant to be played on your PC and Steam Deck. To be honest, it doesn't even matter if you buy the Steam Deck or an ROG Ally or Legion Go or whatever, because you're probably gonna buy games on Steam anyways. So I firmly believe that Valve could maintain a $400 price point for the lowest end Steam Deck too, all with minimal sacrifices. Valve could probably keep the same pricing structures and major differences between the various SKUs of Steam Deck 2s. Like maybe the mid and upper tier Steam Deck 2s have OLED displays and the lowest end one has the lowest amount of storage and also an LCD display. Something like that, I think. My hope is that Valve doesn't raise the minimum price of a Steam Deck 2 because they know that the Steam Deck 2 is an established, product line. The one true spec to rule them all, of course, is the price. Could Valve introduce more expensive models like a limited edition version of a Steam Deck 2? Sure. And I'm sure a lot of people would buy it. Heck, I'd probably buy it too. I mean, I bought a limited edition Steam Deck OLED after all. I have no qualms with that. It's just a matter of Valve keeping the lowest end model competitive, a $400 price point, or maybe even lower if possible, though I doubt it's possible. So what about you guys? What would make you buy a Steam Deck 2? And most importantly, what are you guys gonna do with your old Steam Decks? Once you get a Steam Deck 2, that is. Will you keep it, sell it, give it away, or repurpose it entirely? If you like this video, please press the like button and check out our other videos. And if you like those other videos as well, be sure to press the subscribe button and share the good gospel of high-tech lowlife with your friends. Furthermore, we have a community Discord for enlightened individuals such as you. And if you wish to further support high-tech lowlife, be sure to check out our Patreon page. Links in the description.